Good morning, everyone. I am Jennifer Mondihar, and now I am going to report the levels of comprehension questions and assessment strategies in teaching literature. But first, let us um, give meaning to the word comprehension. So, for you, what is comprehension? So when we say comprehension, it is an essential skill that students and working professionals need to understand. And when a student or professional comprehends a text or a situation accurately, they can understand, identify the main points, and provide answers to questions from a textbook or events. So when we say essential skill, comprehension is a very important skill, especially in reading literature. Why? Comprehension should comes first before understanding, and comprehension comes first before understanding. So what is the difference between comprehension and understanding? When we say comprehension, it is a skill that we use in order to understand the deep meaning of a certain literary text. While when we say understanding, it is reading without looking for a deep meaning or looking farther the meaning or the deep meaning of the text. So, in short, comprehension is a skill, and reading is just reading or grasping a literary text. So now, according to Mount Sack, there are 6 levels of comprehension questions. But when I tried to search in Google, the results only shows literal, inferential, and evaluative. So levels of comprehension vary from person to person depending on their level of education, experience, and the complexity of the students. So this is the reason why Mount Sack create these 6 levels of comprehension questions, in which they believe that every person has a different levels of understanding. It depends on their experience and their level of education. So there are 6, which is the literal, inferential, evaluative, appreciative, essential, and the last one is critic. So when we say literal comprehension, from the word literal, the answers would be from the text, or the answers will the questions will be answered through the help of the text. So this literal comprehension is sometimes called on the page or right there. So the details are stated and clear for anyone to identify. Lateral comprehension is often referred to as on the page or right there comprehension. So this is the simplest form of comprehension. However, this is very important for the readers. Why? Because this is somewhat a basic level where literary analysis should start. So for example, here we were using the story of the Little Red Riding Hood. So the question is, who did Little Red Riding Hood meet while going to get to her or his grandmother's house? So if I am going to answer this, my answer would be Wolf, because the question is asking who. So if the question is asking and using the word who, the answer would be a name of a person or a name of an animal, since in fables although there are animal character, but also those animal characters have a characteristics of human. So here the identifier would be the word who, since literal comprehension can be answered by who, what, when, why, and yes, who, what, when, why, and where. So let's move to the second level of comprehension, which is the inferential comprehension. Requires the reader or viewer to draw on their prior knowledge of a topic and identify relevant text clues such as words, images and sounds to make an inference. So this level of comprehension is often referred to as between the lines or think and search comprehension. So for example, do you think Little Red Riding Hood will make it to her grandmother's house safely? Why or why not? So inferential comprehension is also called an educated guess. Why? The reader will answer the questions according to her prior knowledge, or the viewer or the reader will answer the questions um, using his opinions. He or she will make a conclusions on what will happen next using the story, or basing in the story, or basing on the story and in the real world. So if I am going to answer this question, which is, do you think Little Red Riding Hood will make it to her grandmother's house safely? Why or why not? I am going to answer either yes, because there's someone would help her, or no, because there's no one would help her. So my answer is depending on my opinions, and I am also depending my answer to the story. Although this is a mix of applying what the reader read in a story and what is the reader's own conclusion, or according to her or his prior knowledge. So next level is the evaluative comprehension. So when we say evaluative comprehension, it requires the reader to move beyond the text to consider what they think and believe in relation to the message in the text. So this evaluative comprehension is often referred to as about the text or beyond the text, and includes big picture comprehension. So for example, do you think it was right for Little Red Riding Hood's mother to send her off into the woods alone? Why or why not? So here in evaluative comprehension, this is the level. Literal comprehension is the basic level, and then to the middle level, and here in evaluative comprehension, this is considered a complex level in which evaluative comprehension can be applied in literary analysis, in literary critics or criticism. Why? Evaluative comprehensions will go beyond the text in order to understand the idea or the main ideas given by the author. So how will the reader understand the text if the author's idea is hidden through a very powerful and flowery words that he or she put in his story? So the reader will use the evaluative comprehension, in which, in order to understand the main idea, or in order to get the main idea of the text, the reader will go beyond the text, and he will search or look further for the deep meaning of the text. So if I am going to answer the example, which is, do you think it was right for Little Red Riding Hood's mother to send her off into the woods alone? Why or why not? So for me, in my own idea, it is not right for the parents to allow her children or toddler to go into the woods alone, because it's dangerous. It will cause harm to the children. Although in a story, Little Red Riding Hood's mother allow her to go into the woods alone in order to go to his grandmother's house. So, based on my answer, I am evaluating the questions, and I am answering it beyond what the text means. So I am using my critical thinking. So next is the appreciative comprehension. To get to the appreciative level of comprehension means that a reader fully comprehends or understands the literal meaning of the reading material. So the reader also has carefully evaluated the situation and can use the ideas gathered and apply them to real-life events or similar conditions. Here, in the appreciative level of comprehension, the readers will answer the questions according to her or his personal reactions and personal reflections. The example here is, how would you feel if you were sent off into the woods alone? Explain your answer. So if I am going to answer this, how would I feel? It um the question is asking for my personal opinions, for my personal reactions. Of course, if my parents would send me off into the woods, I would be scared because I'm scared of dark, and I'm scared of walking alone because my imagination also caused me to scared or to be scared. So according to or based on my answer, I am answering the questions by using my personal reaction and reflections. I am not basing my answer to the story or to the text, in which or in where in the story, Little Red Riding Hood didn't feel scared going to the woods alone with to go to his grandmother's house. However, the question is asking my feeling if I will be sent off into the woods. So I will be scared. Of course, it is scary to go alone into the woods. So that is the appreciative comprehension. I am comprehending or understanding the text or the questions by using my personal reactions. So next is the essential comprehension. Response to text based on drawn from entire text. Look at the big ideas and themes from text. Look at the worldview that the text brings up and applies the themes to today's world. So here is the example. How old should a child be before he or she is allowed to go out alone? What parameters would you set for the child? Explain your answer. So here in essential comprehension, every story has their perspective themes. So using those themes, you have to answer the questions by applying the themes to today's world, to the real world. So here an example: how old should a child be before he or she is allowed to go out alone? Today's world, if you say child, no parents would allow their children or their toddler to go to the woods alone because, again, it is very dangerous, and of course, in a parent's mind, there will be an imagination that would also scare them because their imagination is it would harm or it will cause danger to their child. So, in essential comprehension, using the themes of today's world, I am answering by relating the themes to today's world. So, based on my opinion, as you have observed, based on my answer, as you have observed, I am answering the questions using the themes of the story and the situation in today's world. So next is the critic comprehension. So this is the last levels of comprehension, no? So when you're reading at the critical level of comprehension, you're moving further beyond the text and making judgments as you read. So what is the difference between the evaluative comprehension, which is it is going beyond the text in order to understand or comprehend a certain literary text, and in critic comprehension, you're moving further beyond the text and making judgments as you read. So in evaluative comprehension, the reader would answer it by stating facts and by making judgments. And also, when the reader is answering the certain questions using the evaluative comprehension, they have to add a supporting details in order to support their claims. So here, for example, in critic comprehension, did the author write the story so that it is relatable for kids or adults? What style or form did the author write in? And was the language authentic? Was the description rich? Explain your answer. So as you have observed in the questions are asking for how the author writes his story. So in question number 1, it is relatable for kids or adults. Does the story is relatable for kids and adults? It depends on how the author uses a literary, on what style did the author use it. So, um, in the author is writing is it's if the author writes a story, it depends on it is for it if he is writing for the kids or if he is writing for the adults. So there is a difference between the books for kids and the books for adults. So what style or form did the author write in? So the reader will also make judgment on what style or form or literary devices that the author used in his or her story. So those are the 6 levels of comprehension, which is the literal meaning, which is the basic level of comprehension. Next is the inferential, which is an educated guess, and the evaluative meaning, which is the understanding the text. And after the evaluating, there is an appreciative, which is the answer with base to the personal reactions and personal reflections. And the essential skill, which is applying the themes of the story to today's world. And lastly, the critic comprehension, which is the moving further beyond the text and making judgments on how the author writes his or her story. So, from the word critic, this is also the critical level of comprehension. Now, after understanding the level of comprehension, let us go beyond the assessment strategies in teaching literature. So, authentic assessment strategies, or more neutrally as alternative assessments such as portfolios, performances, and exhibitions, allow students to showcase their talents and what they have learned in the course in creative manners. So we are already familiar with these authentic assessment strategies because this is the strategies that the curriculum in this generation uses. So this is the replacement of the traditional assessment strategies in which the paper and pen strategies. Here in the authentic assessment, the three domains are used, which is the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. So in authentic assessment, the learners were encouraged to perform in order to show what they have learned and in order to develop their skills, not just in writing and reading. So authentic assessment strategies can be based in almost any types of courses, even those that more often use traditional forms of assessment. So as we have observed here in ASCAT institutions, authentic assessment is widely used by different courses. Since according to some research that authentic assessment is more effective than traditional paper and pen assessment strategies. So many teachers are now also experimenting with self-evaluation and peer evaluation. So what is the difference between the self and peer evaluation? When I say self, the teachers will let their students evaluate their performance on assignments. While in peer evaluation, teachers is letting their students to evaluate the performance of their peers on assignments. So here is the 5 evaluation and assessment examples. So the first one is the assessment is the act of gathering information daily to understand individual students' learning and needs. So when we say assessment, this is a tool that teachers or instructors use in order to measure the learning of the students. Number 2, testing refers to procedures that are based on tests. In learning, it is salient part of assessment. So testing is part of the assessment, in which this testing is also the procedure in order to measure the learning of a student in the learning of the student. In testing, this will be the basis of the learning of the students or if there would be some there would be a need, or there would be a need to change, or a need to what do we call that, develop. Next, number 3 is language testing. It is the practical and study evaluating the proficiency of an individual using a particular language effectively, according to Priscilla Allen. So this language testing, for example, in reporting. So in reporting, the teacher is letting their students to understand and then discuss their task or their lesson to the class. So there is a rubric there which the teacher will grade the mastery of the students. So in mastery, it includes the language mastery of the students and also the mastery of the topics. So in language testing, the teacher will test the students, will test the language proficiency of the students in order to come up to the conclusion of if there is need to develop, or if there is a lacking that the students will need to improve. So next is the measurements. More broadly includes testing and other types of measurements, as well as other types of information that result in quantitative data such as attendance, records, questionnaires, teachers' rating of students, and etc. So in measurements, for example, in attendance, the teacher is collecting the attendance in order to see, or to see or to look if the students are willing to participate or are willing to learn. Because if the students has a complete attendance, of course that will also reflect to the participation of the students, or the willingness of the students to go to school in order to learn. So here in teachers rating of students, it will show, or the teachers will show or the students will know if the students has a lot of learnings, or has a less learning. So when we say rating of students, the teachers will also critic or grades the students according to their performances. And the last one is the evaluation. It is the culminating act of interpreting the information gathered for the purpose of making decisions or judgments about students' learning and needs, often at reporting time. It forms as a part of assessment. So, evaluation is also a part of assessment in which it measures, and the purpose of this is to make judgments on about the students' learning. It is to gather information about the students' participation and the students' learning in order to address if there is a lacking, or if there is need to develop to the student skills. So there are categories of literature, two categories of literature test, which is the literary information test and the literary interpretation test. When we say literary information test, it is a computerized multiple choice test developed collaboratively by the GMU Center of Assessment and Research Studies and GMU Libraries. So this literary information test is somewhat a paper and pen test, in which is the students will be given a test, which is a multiple choice test, and then they will just read it and choose an answer from the choices. So this is more like a spoon feeding to the students. But in literary interpretation test, having accepted the principle of assessment based on proficiency rather than fact acquisition for the four language skills, and the group tried to apply the same principle to literary information. So here in literary interpretation test, for example of this is the authentic assessments, which is the reporting. Why? The student reporting and literary analysis. Because in literary analysis, the students will analyze the text and then they will understand the whole story. So that is the literary information interpretation test. they will read, they were given, they will read, they will understand by themselves. So this is a student-centered test. The instructor or the teacher will instruct them or guide them, and the students will do his or her part, which is to um, understand, search, or look for a guide, and then understand by himself or themselves. So that is the literary interpretation tests. Again, the difference between literary information test and literary interpretation test is that when we say information test, it is more on feeding, and when we say interpretation test, it is more on authentic assessment, which is letting the students to perform or show their talents or learnings in order for the teacher to measure their proficiency and their students learning. So I think that is so much for my part, and then I hope you all understand my report and have a good day. Thank you.